After, the next morning, after we'd taken Mother over to the hospital and they'd run all the tests and everything, decided that she also had a large aneurysm. Uh, was not in very good shape. Well, and the next morning, when the doctors came around to make their checks and they got her in the room, run all the tests on her, they just couldn't believe the change. And she did make a miraculous recovery, and another demonstration of the power of prayer. But in the meantime, I decided that Mother was having a stroke, and I didn't know how well she was going to come out of it, whether she was going to be crippled up or not. And this is a big house here that perhaps ought to sell this farm. So when I got her home here, I talked it over with her, and she said, yeah, probably it'd be a good idea. So we listed the farm for sale, and we had a lot of lookers, but the farm just didn't seem to sell. And there didn't seem to be any crippling effects of this stroke. So after it had been on the market for about 6 months or so, then Mother said to me one day, did you really want to sell this place? And I said, no, I really didn't want to. And she said, well, I don't either, so let's take it off the market. So we did that. So I think probably what I'll do now is transfer the title of this farm into Madison Enterprises so it can remain perpetually within the family. I think it was in the summer of 78 or 79, I saw an ad in the VFW magazine for some of these Carpathian walnut trees. So it sounded like a good deal, so I told Nick about it too. So Nick said, well, buy 10 of them trees, that he'd like some of them too. So I ordered 10 of those walnut trees, and Nick planted some over to his place, and we planted some here, but I planted them all but one, and I told Mother, I said, you got the green thumb, now let's see you plant that tree. So the Carpathian walnut tree on the extreme east line of our yard here, next to the field, that's the one that Mother planted, and it was planted the same day as there are 2 other ones still growing that I had planted. I planted another one a year later, but they're planted the same day, but yet there's a terrific difference in those trees. The one that Mother planted seems to have taken the effect of her green thumb. It, up until this winter, was considerably bigger than the rest of them. Now this is a severely cold winter, but we got a good snow cover, so we'll see how these trees winter through this winter. And then in 1980, I think, Mother had a recurrence of that gallstone. And again, we take her down to Fork Lake Hospital, and they got her over there, but they had the Japanese had invented a new kind of a tool that you could run down a person's throat, and there was an old gallstone that lodged in the passageway that used to lead from the upper intestine to the gallbladder, and they managed to fish that thing out of there without opening her up, which was another miraculous thing. Let's see, it was after we got back from Stowe Lake in 1980, I decided that the old porch on the south side of the house here, I was going to tear that off. So I had Chris and Johnny were out here, my grandchildren, and they helped Grandpa. We tore that old porch off of there, and then I got a backhoe out here and dug it out. And then we had a cement block laying bee here one time, as Art was going with Karen then, and so Art and Karen and Bob and Pete and Mike and Nick were all out here, and they laid up these cement blocks for the new foundation. Lynn and I poured the cement floor, and Lynn was mixing the cement, dumping it down the chute, and I was down below there troweling it, and we put a cement floor in there, and we put this extension onto the kitchen on the south side. I think that was in the summer of 1980. It started that then, and I figured, well, it's going to be about a 6-week project. Well, it turned out to be closer to a year than it was to 6 weeks. It took me a long time. I still don't remember whether that was 79 or 80, but anyhow, we got it on there. Crystal left in 1970. Let's see, what year was that Crystal was born? 2 days after Grandma's birthday. She was born, and our little jewel here, and I spent quite a bit of time with Grandpa and Grandma. So we decided in 1980 to have a family reunion of direct descendants of my father. Since 1919, we've had a family reunion of the descendants of my grandfather and grandmother, Madison. So we had a pretty good gathering here in the yard. Esther was here, and Pat and Glenn came up, but a whole lot of the cousins and whatnot didn't make it, and Squint was here, Jimmy. So we decided to try it again in 1981 in the summer, in August of 1971, but we didn't get a very good turnout then. I don't know whether we'll try it again next year or not, but possibly so. In 1980, on Grandma's birthday, the first of our great-grandchildren was born. Jeannie and Ron had their little baby was born, and 2 days later, Dave and Jan had their little girl, little Marini. So we got Sarah and Maureen in 1980, and one on Grandma's birthday and 1 day later, and now lo and behold, on Grandma's birthday in 1981, little Jessie is born to Jackie and Bob. So we've got 3 great-grandchildren now, and 2 of them were born on Grandma's birthday, and 1 of them 2 days later. This summer, Mary was expecting her little boy in July, so we didn't go out to Lawler's resort with the rest of the gang this year. We better be here, and so it was in the latter part of July or first part of August when our latest grandson was born, Murray's little boy. Sweet little man, and a lot of smiles for Grandpa. When he grows up, he'll get a kick out of hearing that, I suppose. He gets to be a real macho man. And anyhow, Timmy was born on July 23rd. And during this winter, Jeremy had swallowed some gas in December of 81. And, contracted pneumonia from that, and was a very sick little boy, and of course a lot of prayers went up. So as you can plainly see, the time never grows dull for a grandpa or a grandma or a dad or a mother, or when you're a child. So all through your life, you think you're through with one crisis, and another one will pop up, and life is just a progression of one event after the other. When those events stop, I guess that's the time you better start worrying, because if you don't have those little trials and tribulations, then you don't have the people around you that you love. The more people you have around you that you love and that love you, of course, you have increased numbers of these little emergencies and little disasters, and yet they're all part of life. Maybe they're trying you out. It's how well we handle our stewardship. When we look back, as I can now, on most of my lifetime, it's a great thing to see how the Lord has entrusted each and every one of us with the stewardship of our life. What we do with that is what determines where we will spend eternity. And when you think of what there is on the other side, then it's no contest. There's nothing in comparison to loving and serving the Lord. That's what life is all about. I don't know how well I'll be able to sing here without any accompaniment, but way back in 1933, when I was going with a little neighbor girl down there and thinking seriously about marrying her, I'd gone and shopped for some sheet music. She had a piano, and I bought a song that I thought was very prophetic. And now when I look back at it, I guess it was more so than I had even dreamed. And I'll try singing it here. I don't know how good it's going to be, but it went something like this. Here is my heart with all my love. They both belong to you. Year after year, I'll love you, dear, no matter what we go through. When your hair has turned to silver, I will love you just the same. I will always call you sweetheart. That will ever be your name. Through a garden filled with roses, down that sunset trail we'll stray. When your hair has turned to silver, I will love you as today. Always it seems I've built my dreams all wound around you, dear, and I'll confess my happiness means having you always near. When your hair has turned to silver, I will love you just the same. I will always call you sweetheart. That shall ever be your name. Through a garden filled with roses, down that sunset trail we'll stray. When your hair has turned to silver, I will love you as today. I doubt very much if the singing or the accordion player will ever make the top 40 list, but it'll be something that my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren maybe someday can hear it and say, aha, so that's what my old grandpa sounded like. We thought we'd throw that in there just for memory's sake for the kids that grew up and used to hear that when they were growing up. It was back in about 52 or 53 or 54, somewhere in there. I had gone to Stacy one time they had an advertisement in the paper. Somebody wanted to sell a bicycle, so I thought it was time my kids had a bicycle, learn to ride, so I'd gone there to buy that bicycle and or to look at it. And well, then we bought the bicycle, but they had an old single row button accordion there too, a real old timer. And I said, hey, I hadn't played an accordion since I used to play for dances way back in the 30s when I bought one brand new, and my dad had asked me how I was going to pay for it because I'd ordered it from Montgomery Ward, and I said, oh, I'm going to play for dances and pay for this thing. So before the first month's installment came due on that accordion, I did play for a dance, and I made all the payments on that accordion that way. But then I got married, and times got tough, and I'd sold my old accordion and hadn't had one around for years. And then when I went to buy this bicycle here, them people had that old single row button accordion there, an old Hohner, so I bought it, and I brung that home and hoping that some of my kids would learn to play it. But they learned to pick guitars real good and banjos, and even some of them learned to pick the mandolin, but none of them ever learned that accordion. I was kind of sorry about that. I didn't know how to teach anybody, so then I had a standing offer, and the first one of my grandchildren could ever play a tune on that accordion, I was going to give it to him. Well, Jeff was a little feller. Then I suppose he was about 9 or 10 years old, and he was out here, and he was fooling around with that accordion, and by golly, he did play enough of a tune so I could recognize what it was. So I gave it to him, and I hope that Jeff still got that accordion, but I don't know if he ever fooled around with it much and ever learned to play it. I never got to hear him on it after that. How you doing, Jeff? Did you ever learn? As we look back over life now from this vantage point of ripe old age of nearly 68, we can see what in our lives was wasted, and the things that have meaning, and what a waste the times that the whiskey we drank and the false pleasures we seek, and the times we spend anxiously trying to struggle to make a big name for ourselves. And when we get to this age, we can look back and see the only thing that had any value at all was those things that we had done for the Lord. And whenever we do something for the Lord, we can see that that's the best thing we ever done for ourselves. We would like very much to instill that in our children when the children are young and we're still young ourselves. But like some great philosopher said, we get too soon old and too late smart. And I guess that's the way it is. When we think about how the Lord created things and set things up, we can look at the most important jobs in this earth. And the most important thing we'll probably ever do is uh, be a parent, be a father or mother. Now we can see what an importance that is, and yet God, in all His wisdom, trusted this job to strict amateurs. There absolutely are no experienced parents. By the time you get to be an experienced parent, you're already a grandparent. So you can't roll back the clock and start it over again. There's nothing you can do about yesterday. That's already gone. Whatever you did is already on the record for yesterday. You can't wipe it off, but it is an ever-forgiving God. That's one thing we must never forget, that whatever we do, and nothing is so severe or so bad that the Lord can't forgive us. That's the only really unforgivable sin, to think that we have done something so bad that the Lord can't forgive us. So the sin that we've done before that isn't the one that's going to destroy us. It's the feeling of despair afterwards. That's what will sink the boat. So we look at Judas and Peter, we can see that they both did the same thing. They both denied Christ. Yet Peter wept bitterly and regretted what he'd done, and the Lord forgave him. Judas went and despaired and hung himself. One hadn't done anything worse than the other, and yet the Lord has put these little examples in front of us so to show us just what is important and what isn't important. As I look back over my life, which extends from the horse and buggy days to the space age of the 1980s, I can recall a good many historical events that happened during that time. I distinctly remember when President Warren G. Harding died. If I remember right, I think that was in 1922. And then Silent Cal became president. And I can remember the hot presidential campaign and discussion when Herbert Hoover was running for president, and he was running against a fellow by the name of Hughes. And my father and his twin brother, my father was a Democrat. His twin brother, of course, he was a Republican, and they had some pretty warm discussions. And then Hoover was elected, and I can remember the times, and there was great prosperity for a little while through 1926, 27, and 28, and then 1929 the bottom fell out of things. The aviation age was growing, was what you might say becoming more common. We'd see an airplane more and more often through the late teens and the early 20s, and quite a few people had tried flying the Atlantic, and most of them were never heard from again. And then in 1927, Charles Lindbergh took off, and he made it. He flew from New York to France, and there was a terrific celebration. He was really made a national hero, and the papers were full of it. The first prize fight I can remember hearing over the radio was when Jack Dempsey and Louis Firpo. And then I distinctly remember when Gene Tooney defeated Jack Dempsey to become the heavyweight champion of the world. I can't remember too much about Jess Willard before that. You know, we have to bear in mind that there was no radio or no television. The only way you'd get this kind of news is reading the paper. And the first few years of my life, pretty much the paper that I read would be the funny paper. And I don't remember what year it was when I got beyond that stage, but started taking more of an interest in current events and world events. And in 1929, we had the terrific crash, and there was very much hard times, unemployment, soup lines, hungry people, and a lot of the young people were on the move on the railroad cars. They rode freight trains. I did some of that myself. And in 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president. And the first thing he did after his election as president, he declared a bank holiday. Now, the paper money that we had before that were about half again as big as the dollar bills and $5 bills and the paper money that we have now. But all that money was called in, and then they issued new currency, which was the small bills that we know now today. And they changed we went from the standard of silver certificates to gold. And the country was a long time in making a recovery from that deep depression. Everybody lost faith in everything. They had the way you could buy shares in Wall Street. Like, for instance, my father lost an awful lot of money gambling on the wheat market. They had what they called marginal buying. For instance, if wheat was $1 a bushel, you could just buy a 10-cent margin on, that was the top 10 cents that you bought. Actually, no wheat ever changed hands. It was all paper. It was all bauble. Then if the price of wheat would go up to $1.10, you'd double your money. If it went down to 89 cents, you lost all your money. Well, this was a good adventure. A lot of people made millions just on paper. There was actually nothing there. They hadn't really bought any wheat. All they had bought was a piece of paper. And so all of this credit, nothing was backing it up. And then all of a sudden that stock market began to wind down on what they call the Black Thursday. In October of 1929, many people went out and committed suicide. One day they were a millionaire on paper, and the next day they didn't have a thing. They had no job and they had no money. So the paper tigers were really desperate. The people who were poor to begin with really didn't affect them that much. They were poor and they were still poor, so it sort of was a weeding out process. It did give people a completely new set of values, and through all the terms of Franklin D. Roosevelt, and we were struggling, and he had initiated WPA projects and a lot of public works to create jobs, and the private sector was slowly but surely was making a little recovery, but not as fast as Roosevelt would like to have had it. And then the war cloud started rolling in the late 30s. Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo had came to power in Italy and Japan and Germany, and these guys stirred up such a controversy among their own people, and I guess they began to believe in their own glory, and they started getting uh, ambitious, and Japan started moving into China, and they had invaded Indonesia, and the Italians under Mussolini had gone down into Africa, and they'd conquered Ethiopia and quite a bit of northern Africa. Hitler had taken a cue from these people, and Neville Chamberlain had gone over to Germany, and he'd signed an agreement with Hitler, and he'd given him what they called the Sudetenland and part of Czechoslovakia, and he said, now we've bought peace for our time, but he'd hardly got home again when Hitler marched into Poland, and then France and England declared war on Germany. And well, that war just, I think that was in 1939, that war just was more or less a stalemate. Nobody was attacking anybody, except that Hitler went on through Poland, and he took Czechoslovakia, and he took Austria, and France and England was sitting behind the Maginot Line over in France, just watching what he's doing. And then in 1940, after Czechoslovakia and Poland and Austria, Hitler turned around and he went through France in about a month. France and Denmark and Holland and Belgium and Luxembourg, and he took all them countries. Then he went up into Norway, and he took that. And, World War II was well on its way. And then, of course, on December 7th of 1941, the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor, and we were in the war. Well, that stimulated the economy. The ability of the United States to produce goods was uncompared anywhere else in the whole world at that time, and we more or less became the arsenal for our own war with Japan, and then of course we declared war on Germany, and we were supplying the goods for the whole world, for Russia and France, what was left of France, and England. Some of the Free French had escaped and gone over to England and formed a French brigade over there, and the Norwegians had done the same thing, and the Poles and the Czechoslovakians, and the war was quite messy. And every time we looked, we was becoming defeated. But all the time we were building up. We were building more and more war goods until finally we just overwhelmed Germany and with all the goods we could produce. And in the meantime, the Germans had marched into Russia, and they didn't quite take Moscow and St. Petersburg, which was Leningrad, and then Stalingrad, and that was the extent of the Germans' advance. And after that thing started going downhill for the Germans, greatly because the ability of the United States to mass produce war goods, we just overwhelmed them. If we could just make guns and ships and airplanes and bullets and stuff faster than ourselves and our allies could use them up on Germany. And after that began to tell, the war began to unwind quite rapidly. And in 1945, in the April, I think, of 1945, the Germans surrendered, and then the dropping of the A-bomb, the birth of the atomic age, a dark day for the history of mankind. We dropped the A-bomb on Hiroshima, and then a few days later on Nagasaki in Japan, and I was over in the Pacific at that time. I was fighting the Japs, and of course I was I saw it as a good thing, and it did save millions and millions of American lives, but it opened up the whole paradox of destroying the world. From that day on, the nations have built up atomic weapons, and so now that at this time in history there was enough atomic weapons stockpiled and stored in various countries to destroy the entire world, and I just can't see any sense in building any more, and yet uh, our our state our federal budget for this year is taken up mostly to build more weapons, and of course Russia is doing the same thing, and it's just inconceivable that man could be stupid enough to start an atomic war, and yet if he starts any kind of a war, it's liable to escalate into an atomic war. So it's just hard to see where this is all going to go to. It brings back memories of back in the 20s and in the 30s, as conditions were then before the onset of World War II. It's somewhat like a rich man. I wonder if any of you ever seen a rich man who had enough money. He had always wanted more. This same philosophy of the human race seems to be the thing that starts all wars. If man could learn to have one God, and that's God himself, then there'd be no reason for a war at all. But when you make power or money or any worldly goods is your God, then that's the God that you will serve. And when you serve that God, it leads to war, because you're trying to make your God bigger than the other guys. And life just doesn't work that way. The Lord has made us some promises that when He established the New Testament, He gave to Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and He said, "Go forth and teach all nations, and I'll be with you all days, even unto the consummation of the world, and the very gates of hell will not prevail against you." That is the only hope there is in this world. It's not in atomic weapons, it's not in money, it's not in power, and it's not in riches. The only salvation for this world is to love and serve God. And the many apparitions that where the Blessed Mother has appeared to children in different places down through history, this has always been her message. People that must pray. They must pray to the Lord. They must begin to serve the proper God. That is my message to all my descendants. Serve the proper God, and all other problems will take care of themselves. There's nothing, there's no problem so great that the Lord and you cannot handle it together. It doesn't take much of a problem to be so great that you can't handle it by yourself. It's too bad that your old grandpa had to be that old before he discovered that, but therein lies peace. And peace in the world, or peace in a nation, has to begin with peace in your own heart, and peace in the hearts of your family. So as the peace in the families grows and takes root, then that peace will extend or emanate or grow out of that family to those surrounding them. And that only is the only salvation there is for this earth. It won't be in some political party. And it won't be in some great army or some powerful navy or a powerful air force or in ballistic missiles. The thing that will bring peace to this earth is to serve the Lord and have peace in your own heart. There's no other way. There's no other riches on this earth. There's no greater inheritance that a man could leave to his offspring than to leave them a feeling of love and peace within his own heart, and pray to the Lord his God that peace may be extended to all his descendants, all his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, and all the generations that may come after that. That then, my friends, is my prayer to each and every one of you, that you may know the peace and the comfort of the Lord Jesus in your heart. There is no other value or reward on this earth that can compare with that. That's all there is. And I thank you now, and I hope that 25, 30, 40, or 50 years from now, that somebody can listen to this message and gain the same love and the peace with the Lord that old Grandpa has known in the last few years. And this removes all fear. There's no fear of death. There's no fear of what may come tomorrow. There's no regrets about yesterday. It's you and the Lord today. Peace. Peace be with all you. I love you, and I pray for you constantly.